In this video, we will talk about how to find the side length of a square given the diagonal. So I have two examples for us to work through here. Let's check out the first one. Let's say we have this square and we're told the diagonal length is 10. How can we figure out the side length? So we can label the side length x. And remember, if this side is x, this side must also be x, because each side of a square has the same length. So how can we find out what x is? Well, it helps if we recognize that all of the interior angles of a square are right angles or 90-degree angles. So if we'll notice, these two sides, along with the diagonal, form a right triangle. And when we have a right triangle, we can apply the Pythagorean theorem, which says a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, where a and b are the smaller sides and c is the hypotenuse. So what we can do is we can plug in x for a, and we can plug in this x for b, and we can let this 10 right here be the c. So here's what we get. X squared plus x squared is equal to 10 squared. And now we can try to solve for x to figure out what this side length is. So let's do that. So x squared plus x squared, that's 2x squared. On the right hand side, we get 10 squared, that's 10 times 10, which is 100. To solve for x, we can divide both sides by 2. So over here, the 2's will cancel out. We're left with x squared is equal to 100 divided by 2, that's 50. And to solve for x, we just need to take the square root of each side. So the square root of x squared is just x. And over here, we're left with the square root of 50. Now, if we'd like, we can simplify the square root of 50 by noticing that we could write it like this. The square root of 25 times the square root of 2. Well, the square root of 25 is just 5. So we could really write our final answer as x is equal to 5 root 2. And that's our final answer. So the side length right here is 5 root 2, and this side length is also 5 root 2, and we could say this side length and this side length, so every side length of the square is equal to 5 root 2. All right, let's try one more example. Let's say we have this square where the diagonal has a length of 8. How can we figure out the side length? So again, we could call this side x, and we could call this side x. Well, once again, we have another right triangle where this angle is 90 degrees, and we'll notice that these two sides, along with the diagonal, form a right triangle. So once again, the Pythagorean theorem applies. So what we can say is x squared plus x squared must be equal to 8 squared. So let's write that. We'll say x squared plus x squared is equal to 8 squared. So let's try to solve for x. So again, x squared plus x squared, that's 2x squared, is equal to 8 squared, that's 8 times 8, which is 64. To solve for x, we can divide both sides by 2. These 2's cancel out, we're left with x squared is equal to 64 divided by 2, that's 32. To solve for x, we can take the square root of each side. So the square root of x squared is just x, and we're left with the square root of 32. Now, if we'd like, we could simplify this to the square root of 16 times the square root of 2, and you'll notice the square root of 16 is 4. So we could write our final answer as x is equal to 4 times the square root of 2. So that is the side length.